"You promised me half if we pull this off," my best friend whispered to my wife, and I was hiding in the shadows recording every word. 10 years of marriage destroyed in one secret trip to Miami. What happened next will leave you questioning who you can really trust. Subscribe, like, comment and watch till the ending to share this interesting story to family and friends. My name is Jason Carter. I'm 38, a financial analyst living in Chicago, married for 10 years to the woman I thought was my soulmate. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, a dog that thinks it owns the house, and a life I built from the ground up. People often tell me I'm lucky that I have it all, but luck doesn't matter when the people closest to you are hiding the darkest secrets. I learned that the hard way, and it all started with a simple message on a Monday morning. I was sitting at my home office, the sun cutting sharp lines across my desk, a cup of lukewarm coffee sweating in my hands, when the notification appeared. Vanessa had sent me a picture of swaying palm trees and sparkling ocean waves with the caption, "Miami vibes. Wish you were here," face blowing a kiss. My stomach twisted. Miami? I whispered to myself, scanning her email, her calendar, anything that could explain this. Supposedly, she was at a work conference, Chicago-based. I tapped the screen hoping I was missing something. Then I noticed the location tag. Not a corporate hotel in downtown Miami. Something else entirely. My heart skipped when I recognized a familiar face tagged in the post. Mike. My best friend since college, the guy who had been in my corner for 20 years, the guy who knew everything about my marriage, my family, my business. And he was there with her. A flashback hit me, unbidden. Mike, 2 years ago, sitting across from me at our favorite bar, complaining about how life had screwed him over, while I covered the rent on his apartment. I had lent him money he swore he would pay back soon. Vanessa had always joked about him freeloading, but I trusted him. Always. And now I couldn't tell if I felt anger, betrayal, or a sick curiosity that something even darker might be happening. I picked up my phone, heart hammering, and checked our shared calendar. No entries, no hint of travel. Then my eyes caught the confirmation. A hotel booking under Vanessa's name, completely secret, paid with the company credit card she claimed to need for expenses. I scrolled through her Instagram for anything else. Nothing. Until I found it. Just a subtle story highlight. A shot of 2 cocktails, the reflection of 2 people's faces in the glass, laughing intimately. The closer I looked, the more my stomach sank. I tried to reason with myself, tried to imagine any innocent explanation. Maybe it's a work retreat. Maybe Mike's girlfriend is there, but the unease wouldn't leave. I could almost hear my father's voice, heavy with warning, saying, "Jason, people you trust can hurt you the most." My father had been a tough man, taught me never to be blindsided, to always see 2 steps ahead. Maybe this was that test. I tried to focus on the kids, on breakfast, on anything normal, but my mind kept returning to the Miami skyline, to the message, to the tagged photo of Mike smiling, arm around Vanessa, too close. And I realized, maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about a spontaneous vacation. Maybe it was about a betrayal I hadn't even seen coming. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I didn't know if I was more afraid of the truth or what I would do once I discovered it. I couldn't sit still. My mind was racing, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I paced the living room, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the ceiling as if answers would rain down from it. My best friend. My brother in everything but blood. And Vanessa, my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. My chest tightened as I tried to force logic into a situation that had none. I remembered a conversation from years ago. Mike slouched on my couch, voice tight with envy, talking about how he felt stuck in life. "You've got it all, man," he'd said, eyes sharp but bitter. "Family, career, everything. I'm just floating." I had laughed, thinking it was his usual exaggeration. Back then, I would have sworn he'd never crossed the line. Back then, I had been wrong. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. Flight records, hotel reviews, Instagram stories. Every tiny detail mattered. Miami was a maze of hotels and beaches, but the app showed them together, often posting at odd hours. Vanessa smiling, Mike laughing, both wearing sunglasses that mirrored each other's smiles too perfectly. I leaned back, rubbing my face, trying to breathe through the tight knot of dread building in my stomach. Then it hit me, the credit card charges. A hotel suite under her name, expensive dinners at rooftop bars, late-night spa treatments. Everything she had claimed was work-related was a lie. My mind flashed to our first fight about money, 5 years ago, when Vanessa accused me of being too careful with finances. I'd laughed then, thinking it was typical marital bickering, but maybe it had been planting seeds for this moment. I decided I needed more than pictures and charges. I needed proof, a clear window into what was happening without her knowing. I started tracking her social media patterns, noting every check-in, every tagged friend, every cryptic story highlight. It was like watching a movie unfold, except I was living it, and every frame hurt like a knife twisting in my chest. A memory hit me like a freight train. Vanessa in our kitchen years ago, eyes sparkling, whispering about the thrill of a secret. I had laughed, thinking it was harmless, a small piece of her fun-loving personality. Now, I realized it had been a warning, a hint of the recklessness she was capable of when she didn't feel restrained. And Mike had always liked the thrill, the chaos. A combination that could be dangerous. I needed to see them to understand. I booked a flight to Miami, rented a car, and rehearsed every possible scenario in my head. Each one ended with me either breaking down or losing my temper, but I pushed those thoughts aside. My father's voice echoed again, "Revenge is best served cold. Never let emotion blind you." I would follow him this time. Night fell and I couldn't sleep. My room felt too small, the shadows too long. I kept staring at the phone, imagining their laughter in that Miami suite. Each message, each photo, every tiny detail whispered the same thing. Betrayal isn't always obvious, sometimes it's patient, and it waits for you to drop your guard before striking. I whispered to myself almost as a mantra, I need proof. I need answers. I can't confront her blindly. Please don't forget to subscribe. I waited until dinner, forcing myself to act normal, though every muscle in my body screamed otherwise. Vanessa arrived home, hair loose over her shoulders, a casual smile plastered on her face like she hadn't just sent me a picture from Miami with my best friend. I set the table quietly, trying to slow my racing thoughts, watching her from the corner of my eye. The kids were at their rooms doing homework. This was just us. Perfect. Normal. Fit. I took a deep breath. Hey, how was your conference? My voice was calm, too calm, and she raised an eyebrow, tilting her head in that way that had always been so effortlessly charming. Her smile didn't falter. It was good. Busy, you know. Lots of networking. She said this while setting down the pasta I had cooked, every gesture fluid, casual. The kind of casual that feels like a mask. I forced a laugh. Must be nice, all that sunshine. I didn't mention Miami. Not yet. I watched her carefully, noticing the tiny details I had missed before. The faint tan lines, the lingering scent of coconut sunscreen, the subtle shimmer of nail polish on her toes. Everything screamed vacation, not work. As she spoke, my mind drifted. I remembered a night 2 years ago when she had come home late, claiming she'd been at a client event. I had caught a faint smell of someone else's cologne on her jacket, but I brushed it off. You're imagining things, I told myself. She had always been glamorous, magnetic, the kind of woman people remembered. But now I could see the same glimmer in her eyes, the same thrill that had betrayed her secrets then. Jason, you're quiet tonight, she said, her tone almost teasing like she could sense my unease. I smiled, shaking my head, pretending everything was normal. I poured wine into our glasses, but I didn't drink. My hands were steady outwardly, but inside I felt like my chest was a pressure cooker, every beat warning me that confrontation was coming. She spoke about work, about minor successes, and I nodded, careful to keep my voice measured. My mind was rehearsing every angle, every way I could bring up Miami without giving away that I already knew the truth. I remembered Mike laughing at my apartment 3 months ago, joking about how life owes him one. The memory twisted in my gut now. That laughter had always been harmless once. Now it felt like a warning I had been too naive to heed. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, then turned away, pretending to be absorbed in her wine. I noticed the app icon. It was Miami-based, something I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened. She knew I hadn't seen it, or she thought I hadn't. The faint hesitation in her smile, the way her fingers brushed the screen, it was a slip, a crack in her armor. For the first time that evening I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. But I didn't speak. I didn't accuse. I stayed calm, letting the tension build. The next words out of her mouth would either be a lie I could ignore or a clue I could use. She smiled, almost to herself, and said, "You know, sometimes secrets make life more interesting." That was the moment I realized, she wasn't hiding just a trip. She was hiding a part of herself I hadn't seen in 10 years, and I was about to uncover it all. I couldn't wait any longer. Sleep was a stranger, replaced by a constant churn of anger, fear, and disbelief. By sunrise, I had booked a flight to Miami, rented a car, and rehearsed every scenario in my mind 100 times. I wasn't going in blind, I needed proof, clarity, something undeniable. I had learned over the years that confrontation without evidence is just anger masquerading as justice. And I wasn't about to let 10 years of my life collapse on a hunch. Landing in Miami was like stepping into someone else's world. Vibrant, loud, a place where rules were different, boundaries blurred, and secrets could easily hide in plain sight. I drove through streets painted with neon light, palm trees casting long shadows in the early morning sun, until I pulled up to the hotel listed in the app notifications. My heart hammered as I parked. The building was sleek, modern, glass reflecting the ocean beyond. Everything about it screamed indulgence, the kind of indulgence I thought Vanessa would never dare pursue with anyone but me. I grabbed a pair of binoculars from the rental car and crouched behind a low wall, scanning the lobby. Through the glass I saw them. Vanessa, radiant, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years, leaning into Mike, his hand brushing hers in a way that made my stomach turn. They were too close. Comfortable. Unaware, or careless, that I was watching. A memory stabbed me sharp and uninvited. The night I proposed to Vanessa. Her eyes had sparkled with excitement, her hands trembling as she said yes. Back then I had promised her stability, protection, and unwavering trust. And now I felt that trust being ripped away in slow motion, frame by frame, right in front of me. I watched as a third figure approached, someone I recognized faintly from a party we'd attended years ago. She smiled at Vanessa and Mike, a knowing glint in her eyes, as if she held secrets of her own. My pulse quickened. What else had I missed? How many threads of deception had been woven right under my nose? I crouched lower, trying to steady my breathing, and my mind ran through every warning sign I had ignored. The work trips that never made sense, the hushed phone calls, the occasional perfume that wasn't hers. I remembered my father's warning, heavy and unyielding, people you trust can hurt you the most. I could feel the weight of it now, more real than ever. Then it happened. Vanessa and Mike stepped toward the elevators, their laughter soft but intimate, and I saw the hotel key card she had retrieved from her purse. They were sharing a suite, together. My vision blurred with rage and disbelief, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly powerless despite standing just yards away. But I forced myself to stay calm. The recording device I had tucked in my jacket felt heavy, a small lifeline in the chaos of my emotions. I needed proof, and now I had the perfect vantage point to capture every word, every gesture, every betrayal. As I crouched in the shadows, the sunlight reflecting off the glass, I realized I wasn't just witnessing a secret vacation. I was uncovering a conspiracy, a web spun by the two people I had trusted most. And the deeper I looked, the more I knew, this was only the beginning. Please don't forget to subscribe. I couldn't just stand by and watch from the shadows anymore. Every laugh they shared, every subtle touch, every careless smile felt like a punch to the gut. I needed more than just observation. I needed context, proof that went beyond speculation. I returned to my tiny rental hotel, heart pounding, replaying everything I had seen in my mind over and over. My hands shook slightly as I organized the pieces. Instagram highlights, hotel booking details, flight records, and the faint trail of text messages Vanessa had accidentally left on her phone when I once borrowed it to call a plumber. Each piece told the same story, but now, like a puzzle, the edges were starting to fit together. I thought about Mike, my best friend since college. The guy I had trusted with every secret, who had shared beers with me at 3 a.m. after heartbreaks, who had once helped me move into my first apartment. And yet, there had always been that flicker of envy in his eyes. I remembered his last birthday. He had complained about life being unfair, about how I had it all, my steady career, my marriage, my family. I had laughed, reassured him, told him he'd get there. But deep down, I now realized that envy had never left him. Vanessa. I remembered her as the vibrant, spontaneous woman I married. The night I proposed, she had shimmered with excitement, eyes wide, hands trembling. Back then, I thought I knew her completely. But the thrill-seeker she had always been, the part of her that craved risk and attention, had been hidden, patient, waiting. That side of her had surfaced now, combined with Mike's greed and jealousy, and the results were devastating. I spent hours tracing their movements through social media, noticing patterns I hadn't seen before. The late-night check-ins, the subtle changes in timing, the slight pauses before responding to messages. It was meticulous, deliberate. And beneath it all, a whisper of planning that chilled me. I recalled a memory of Vanessa in our kitchen years ago, joking about secrets adding spice to life. I had laughed at the time, thinking it was harmless. Now that joke felt like a prophecy. By nightfall I had a plan. I returned to the hotel where I had been observing them and positioned a small, inconspicuous recorder in the lobby. Every laugh, every whispered word, every intimate glance could now be captured without them realizing. My pulse raced as I crouched near the wall, watching from a distance. Vanessa's smile was carefree, a mask hiding intentions I could now sense but not fully decipher. Mike leaned close, his hand brushing hers, subtle yet deliberate. They were unaware that I had every word recorded, every gesture documented. Then it happened. Mike muttered something under his breath. "You promised me half if we pull this off." Vanessa's reply was almost gleeful. "Don't worry. It's all taken care of." The words cut through me like ice. Half what? It wasn't just a betrayal of trust or emotion. It was financial, manipulative, premeditated. Everything I had ignored, every harmless lie, every suspicious action, had led to this moment. As I retreated to my room, the weight of it settled in. I wasn't just watching a secret vacation unfold, I was witnessing a carefully constructed betrayal. The web was intricate, the stakes high, and I had to plan carefully. One wrong move could ruin everything, not just for me but for the people they involved in their deceit. I knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't let them destroy what I had built. I wouldn't confront blindly. This betrayal would be met with strategy, patience, and a quiet, devastating reckoning. And in the shadows of Miami's nightlife, I began plotting. The next morning, Miami felt different. The sun glared off the ocean like a spotlight, exposing everything I had hidden in my own denial. I drove past the hotel several times, watching Vanessa and Mike from the shadows, memorizing patterns, gestures, the rhythm of their deceit. I wasn't here to yell or confront yet. I was here to understand the full scope, and to ensure that when I did act, it would be surgical, precise, and irreversible. I remembered a lesson my father had drilled into me when I was 16. "Jason, emotion is a tool only if you control it. Otherwise it controls you." Every betrayal I had ever suffered, friends who lied, colleagues who cheated, even a girl I thought I loved, taught me that restraint gave power. And now that lesson became my armor. By mid-afternoon, I executed the next step. I walked into the hotel lobby as though I belonged, blending into the crowd of tourists and business travelers. I had a small recorder in my jacket pocket, a hidden camera in my bag, and a notebook in which I could log everything. My pulse was steady, but adrenaline surged beneath the surface, sharpening every sense. I could feel their presence before I even saw them. Through the glass doors of the lobby, I spotted them, Vanessa laughing, radiant, leaning into Mike. Their body language was intimate, casual, confident, as if the world had no consequences. And for the first time, I saw them not just as my wife and my best friend, but as two people capable of incredible deception. I recalled a conversation I'd had with Vanessa months ago, when she joked about little secrets keeping life exciting. I had laughed. That laughter now tasted like bile. I placed the recorder on a side table near the elevators, concealed among brochures and magazines. Every word, every laugh, every whisper would be captured. I crouched behind a decorative column, pretending to scroll through my phone, but I was scanning, memorizing, listening. Vanessa's hand brushed Mike's arm again, innocent to any onlooker, damning to me. Then their conversation took a darker turn. "I told you this would work," Mike murmured, glancing around to make sure no one could hear. "Half of everything just like we planned." Vanessa's laugh was soft, almost conspiratorial. "Relax. Everything's under control. You just wait." I froze. Half of everything? Planning? My mind raced, connecting dots I had only glimpsed before: financial irregularities, secret trips, unexplained withdrawals. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was meticulous, calculated, and potentially catastrophic. I crouched lower, focusing, breathing controlled, feeling the weight of my next moves. I had proof, I had context, and I had patience. For the first time, I felt the calm clarity that comes when all the chaos is visible, when every variable is accounted for. I wasn't just a husband betrayed, I was a strategist, a man reclaiming control over his own story. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lobby, and I knew that the confrontation wasn't far off. Everything was set. Every whisper, every glance, every secret was about to collide with the truth. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same. Please don't forget to subscribe. Night had fallen over Miami, the city alive with neon and the distant hum of traffic, but I was focused only on one thing: evidence. I had spent the entire day gathering proof: recordings, photos, flight itineraries, credit card receipts, and every detail pointed to the same conclusion. Vanessa and Mike had been planning this betrayal for months, if not longer, and now I had the chance to see it unfold with clarity. I returned to the hotel, slipping into the lobby under the guise of a casual guest. My heart pounded, but my expression remained calm, rehearsed. I carried a small recorder, hiding it in the folds of my jacket, and a notebook for any observations I needed to log. I crouched behind a decorative planter, pretending to scroll on my phone while keeping my eyes on them. Vanessa laughed, radiant, leaning into Mike's shoulder. He brushed her hand lightly, deliberately, and my chest tightened. Every glance, every touch, every word was a dagger wrapped in silk. Then I remembered a conversation from months ago. Vanessa, in our kitchen, had joked about how little secrets made life interesting. I had laughed, thinking it was harmless, a quirky part of her personality. Now, the words echoed in my mind like a warning I had ignored. The thrill-seeker I married was fully awake, and she had brought Mike along for the ride. I adjusted the recorder closer to the elevators, careful not to draw attention. I could see them clearly now. Vanessa's hand brushed against Mike's arm as they exchanged low, conspiratorial words. He murmured something and I caught it. "You promised me half if we pull this off." My stomach lurched. "Half of what?" Vanessa replied with a soft, almost gleeful laugh. "Don't worry. Everything's taken care of." I crouched lower, mind racing. Financial manipulation? Planning? This wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was calculated, methodical, and potentially ruinous. My pulse steadied as I realized that I now had leverage, proof that could not be denied. Every misstep, every whispered word, every stolen glance had been documented. They had thought themselves clever, untouchable, but they had underestimated me. I glanced at the lobby around me, tourists, hotel staff, oblivious to the storm unfolding in plain sight. For a moment, I felt the familiar mix of anger and exhilaration. I wasn't just watching, I was strategizing, preparing to reclaim control over everything they thought they had stolen. As they stepped into the elevator, laughing and unaware of the recording, I felt a quiet determination settle over me. I wasn't here to confront blindly, to yell, or to beg. I was here to expose, to reveal the full truth, and to ensure that when the fallout came, it would leave no room for denial or manipulation. Miami's heat and neon lights faded behind me as I retreated to my hotel room. I replayed their interactions in my mind, rehearsing the steps I would take once I returned to Chicago. Every angle had been accounted for. Every betrayal documented. And in that planning, a strange calm washed over me. The storm was coming and I would be ready. I drove back to Chicago the next day, the city skyline rising like a fortress as if reminding me that this was my territory. Vanessa would arrive later that evening, unaware that every whisper, every secret, every calculated move had been documented. I reviewed the recordings, each file a dagger coated in truth. Mike had been careful, but even the most meticulous lies crumble under scrutiny. And now I had proof, undeniable, absolute, and cold. I waited for them in the living room. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, the one I used to love, and my chest tightened as memories flooded back. The first time she laughed in this house, the night I proposed, the little routines that had made 10 years feel like a lifetime. But now those memories were just echoes, fragile remnants of trust that had been shattered. When Vanessa arrived, radiant and smiling, I stayed seated, calm, eyes fixed on the floor, letting the silence build tension. Mike arrived not long after, confident, smug, convinced that I had no clue. I waited a beat longer, letting him settle, letting them feel the false security that had been their shield for months. Then I pressed play on the recorder. Their voices filled the room, crisp and clear, every word revealing the depth of the betrayal. Laughter, whispers, plans for financial manipulation, casual intimacy, they couldn't hide it anymore. Vanessa's confident mask faltered, eyes widening. Mike's smugness dissolved into panic. I stayed still, letting the recording speak, my silence heavier than any scream. Then came the twist I hadn't fully anticipated. Mike's fiancée arrived, tipped off anonymously. Her presence was a shockwave through the room. Vanessa's attempts to manipulate, to charm, to explain fell flat. Mike's excuses clashed with the weight of evidence and the presence of the person he had been deceiving for months. The house was electric with chaos, accusations flying, voices rising, tears streaming, but I remained calm, an anchor in the storm of their own making. By morning they had fled, exposed, defeated, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. I walked through the house, letting sunlight spill across the floorboards, thinking about the past 10 years. The laughter, the small betrayals I had ignored, the love I had believed in, all of it had led to this reckoning. My phone buzzed with a cryptic message, hinting at another thread of secrets I had yet to uncover. I smiled faintly. Some stories never truly end. I sat by the window watching the sunrise, reflecting on what had happened. Betrayal cuts deep, but patience, strategy, and quiet observation are sharper than any sword. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. But the scars remain, subtle, permanent reminders of the cost of trust misplaced. And as I sipped my coffee, the city waking beneath me, I realized this wasn't just a story of betrayal, it was a story of survival, of reclaiming control, and of knowing that sometimes the most devastating victories are the ones won quietly, with precision and patience. Please don't forget to subscribe. The tension in the living room was unbearable. Vanessa and Mike stood frozen, the recorder playing their own voices back to them, every whispered betrayal amplified into a blaring confession. Vanessa's eyes darted toward me, panic creeping in, but there was nothing she could say that would undo the evidence. Mike's smug arrogance had dissolved into wide-eyed disbelief. Every lie they had woven over months, every secret they thought they had hidden, was now exposed in the most undeniable way. The doorbell rang suddenly, slicing through the thick silence. My pulse quickened, not out of fear but anticipation. Standing there was Mike's fiancée, her expression a mix of hurt, anger, and disbelief. She had been tipped off, perfectly timed to witness the unraveling of the web of lies she had unknowingly been a part of. Vanessa's mouth opened, a protest ready to spill, but I raised a hand and the room fell silent. The chaos that followed was electric. Accusations, defenses, pleas for forgiveness, and the realization that every carefully planned manipulation had failed. I watched them flounder, helpless and exposed. Vanessa's eyes darted from Mike to his fiancée, then to me, desperately seeking an escape route. But there was none. The evidence was irrefutable, and the trust they had taken for granted had evaporated completely. I had anticipated their excuses, rehearsed their lies, and yet even I was surprised by the total collapse. It was beautiful in a brutal, almost cinematic way, the culmination of months of observation, patience, and strategy. I recalled the early days of my marriage, the laughter in this very room, the warmth of love I had once believed in. The stark contrast between then and now was almost surreal. I realized how patient Vanessa had been, how cunning, and how Mike had played his part. But patience, calculation, and strategy, those were my allies now. I didn't need to raise my voice or throw objects across the room. Silence, control, and undeniable truth were sharper than any outburst could ever be. Hours passed in chaos, yet I remained a calm observer, cataloging each reaction, each fleeting expression of guilt, each desperate attempt to justify what had been done. Their world had crumbled, and I had orchestrated it quietly, deliberately, and with precision. The satisfaction wasn't in vengeance, it was in reclaiming control, exposing deception, and asserting that no betrayal, no matter how cunning, could go unchallenged forever. Finally, exhausted and humiliated, Vanessa and Mike left. The house was silent again, save for the faint hum of the city outside. I sank into the couch, replaying every moment, letting the weight of what had transpired settle over me. I had won not through anger but through strategy, patience, and foresight. And as I stared out the window, the Miami sun long gone, I felt a strange mix of relief and melancholy. The battle was over, but the war with truth, deceit, and the scars left behind, those would last. Some stories never truly end, and even the quietest victories leave echoes. The morning after the confrontation, the house felt almost foreign. Silence hung in the air, heavy but not oppressive. The kids played outside, their laughter a reminder of life continuing despite the chaos that had erupted the night before. I walked through the living room slowly, my footsteps measured, letting the sunlight spill across the floorboards. Every corner of the house held memories, some joyful, some painful, but now it felt like a sanctuary reclaimed, a place where I could finally breathe without the weight of deception pressing down. I sat by the window, coffee in hand, staring out at the city slowly waking up. Even in this calm, the echoes of betrayal lingered. Vanessa and Mike were gone, exposed and defeated, but the scars they left wouldn't vanish overnight. I remembered the small betrayals over the years, the work trips that didn't exist, the subtle lies, the laughter at moments meant to be private. Each one had seemed insignificant at the time, easily dismissed. But together they formed a pattern, a web of deceit that I had only now fully understood. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, exhaustion, sadness, and a quiet, simmering empowerment. I had reclaimed control over my life, but the experience had changed me. I knew now that trust could never be given blindly again. Yet, in the same breath, I understood that vigilance and patience could turn betrayal into clarity, deception into revelation. My phone buzzed and I glanced at it. An anonymous message blinked on the screen, "You've only scratched the surface." I frowned, a shiver running down my spine. Another secret? Another betrayal waiting in the shadows? I didn't panic. I felt a surge of quiet determination. Some stories never truly end. Some truths are waiting, patient, for the right moment to surface. I leaned back, letting the sunlight warm my face, and allowed myself a small, ironic smile. The past 10 years had been a mixture of love, joy, betrayal, and heartbreak. Now they had been distilled into lessons learned, strategies honed, and a hard-earned clarity. I was stronger, sharper, and more aware than I had ever been. And if another shadow of deception emerged, I would be ready. The city outside buzzed with life, oblivious to the personal storm that had raged inside these walls. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the moment of calm, knowing that while one chapter had closed, another might quietly begin. The scars of betrayal were permanent, but so was resilience. And as I stared out at the horizon, a single thought echoed in my mind. Survival isn't just about endurance, it's about patience, strategy, and knowing when to let the truth speak louder than emotion. Some stories never truly end. And as I rose from the couch, the sunlight reflecting off the hardwood floors, I knew that if deception ever came knocking again, I would be ready, not just to survive, but to emerge stronger, wiser, and unbroken. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.